Okay. All right, we've got, I'd say, enough critical mass. Thanks for being here, everybody. I'm sure we'll have more people joining since this is scheduled to be a longer session. Feel free to come and go as your schedule allows. And I'm so glad all of you can be here today. For those who haven't had the chance to meet me yet, I'm Amelia Neptune, Director of the Bicycle Friendly America program. And I'll be talking today about program updates for the Bicycle Friendly University program. And if we haven't met before, something you should know about me as I go into this presentation is my history before working at the League, as I was a campus bicycle program coordinator for the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So this is Stanford, not Urbana-Champaign. But I wanted to bring it up just to say that the BFU program is very near and dear to my heart. And I've sort of walked in the shoes that some of you are wearing now. And although these days I know that you're walking a very different path than what it looked like maybe 7 years ago. So yeah, just wanted to share that background. Before I get into the program updates, I wanted to take a quick moment to congratulate our 2020 class of Bicycle Friendly University Awards. We just made that announcement a couple weeks ago, so I feel like we're just barely beginning to celebrate. Yes, but you all should be so proud of yourselves, those of you who are in this latest round. We had 38 new and renewing schools in the round, which brings our total up to 212 current bicycle-friendly universities. And here's the breakdown by award level for the current awardees. So congrats again, everybody who renewed or moved up, or all the brand new schools on the list. We're so excited to have you and really inspired by the progress that was continued even in such a tough year for those who submitted their applications sort of later in 2020. All right, so now I'm going to get into some of the changes that have happened. If you have been a participant in the BFU program for a long time, but maybe haven't applied in the last few years, I wanted to sort of go back a few years to share some of the things that have changed, and then I'll talk about some of the things that will be changing or that we're thinking about changing going forward. And you should all have the ability to unmute yourselves. So if you have a question at any point, this session is supposed to be a conversation, so please do feel free to unmute yourself and chime in with any questions you have at all. So what's not changing about the program and what hasn't changed? We continue to strive to be a program that provides recognition and feedback to give schools the roadmap and motivation to improve. That's our goal. As bike advocates, we want to give you the tools and the motivation and help convince your administrations to invest in bicycling. The feedback reports look a little different if you haven't applied in the last 2 years. This is what they look like now, but still going through the E's, going through your application and trying to highlight the things that we recommend most. And we do pull examples from applications. So every time you apply, you know, if you get a feedback report 4 years in a row, you might see some familiar language across those feedback reports, but we do our best to sort of integrate cool new things and links and examples from the latest batch of applications. So we haven't yet done the 2020 feedback. I'm really excited to sort of dive into that and figure out what new things we'll be showing from the 2020 class of awardees, but just wanted to sort of flag that for those who haven't applied to the program in a few years. We switched to this application portal, online application portal back in 2016. So I'm guessing everybody on the call has been in this website and this environment, but this is what it looks like. It's still the same URL. It's always been apply.bikeleague.org. A few things that are new in this system though, as of the last year, you can now add collaborators to your online application, which gives a different user the ability to go in and edit your application. Big warning that it's not smart enough to let multiple people edit at the same time. So don't count on that if you're planning on submitting at the last minute and having 10 people in making their changes all at the same time. We're all really used to Google Docs and Jamboards and all these things where we can live update. But unfortunately, the BFU application is not one of those. So you still have to take turns. And thankfully, the system will warn you if someone else is already logged in making edits. You'll see a view-only version of your application. We also, as of this most recent round, now have the ability to let repeat applicants duplicate their last application, as long as it was done in this system, of course. But it's a very simple click of a button, and all the questions are sort of automatically mapped from the last application to this application. So that does mean that any questions that have changed over the last, since you last applied might not map. Obviously any new questions. And then of course, if you are returning, we hope that things have changed on your campus. So even if you're using this function, strongly encouraged to go through it in detail and update anything that has changed, and not rely too much on that functionality, but it should save some time for those who maybe haven't had very many changes. And then I also wanted to point out a new FAQs for specific to our application portal. This is where you find it on our website, and it is very detailed and very robust, going into every topic from billing and payments and uploads and collaborators, all of those things. So lots of useful information. Once you are applying, just keep that in mind to check there for any answers that you might be looking for. So one big thing that we're sort of grappling with is the timeline of our application system for the BFU program. Those of you who have been in the program since it launched back in 2011 might remember that there used to be 2 deadlines per year for universities. I think they were February and August, with announcements in the late spring and late fall, winter. We moved in 2014, right around the time I started at the League, to 1 deadline per year, always in the fall. This past year, based on feedback we got, and also based on making changes to the application sort of mid-round, we moved the deadline from August to October. That did mean pushing the announcements into the year 2021. So our 2020 announcement happened, the next year. Our communications director assured me that if the Oscars do it, we can do it too. But I did feel bad about that. I wanted to be able to announce the 2020 awardees in 2020. So it's something we're looking at. Based on my conversation with the Slack group last week, the group that Jacob convenes, I did put together a survey that I would love your feedback on. So I'll put that link in the chat too. I think I can do this easily. I would really love people's input. You'll see the survey asks not just about when do you want to submit your application, but also getting schools to think through, like, when is the best time to survey your students, staff, and faculty, and when is the best time to announce? So looking forward to seeing what people say on that to help us think through. We have already announced that for 2021, the deadline is going to be in October, but this will help us think beyond 2021 and into sort of what our new permanent timeline should look like for annual deadlines. Oops. If you haven't applied since 2017, you may not be aware there's now an application fee. It is $100 per school, but we have a whole lot of discounts available. Previous BFUs who are scheduled to renew get 50% off. Institutions that are HBCUs, minority serving institutions, all women's colleges and community colleges can get 50% off. If you are a returning honorable mention or no award designee, the application is free. Your feedback report includes a discount code for your next application to be free of charge, because we really want to encourage those schools to keep at it and come back when they're ready. And then if your school is an affiliate member of the League, your application fee is waived. So as one of our tokens of appreciation for your membership and support. So you can always email us with questions if you think you're eligible for a discount, and we can send you the code.
Hey, Amelia, I have a question. So on the last slide, you said the discount for existing bike-friendly universities. Is this a new discount? Because I remember we applied for renewal in 2019, and I don't think there was a discount then.
So it's not automatic. You do have to use a discount code, and
okay.
So yeah,
well, we may not have done that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's part of the reason I try to talk about it so schools know to ask for it. I do try to make a point to include it in my renewal reminder emails. I think I mistakenly left it out last year, and so a couple schools had to ask for it, and I do apologize for that. But going forward, make sure you ask for that code if you don't already have it when you're up for renewal. If you reapply early because you've made improvements and you want to try to move up in award levels early, there are no discounts for that. Also, if you're lapsed and you are a few years late on your renewal, we still want to incentivize those schools to come back. So we give them a 25% discount. So feel free to reach out if you are up for renewal or expired or lapsed and reapplying to the program. Reach out at any time. Thanks for the question.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so a few other things that are have sort of slowly changed over time. We give out awardees an announcement toolkit. As soon as you hear whether or not you got an award, that email includes a folder with all of the award level and year appropriate award seals, like you see here. And then a link to a toolkit that is pretty lengthy. It's got sample language for a press release, announcements, newsletter announcements, social media announcements, some graphics you can use. It also has a link to our online store where you can buy signage and duplicate certificates. We do send certificates out to awardees. Every school that gets an award should get a certificate and an award letter in the mail. 2020 folks, I'm sorry you haven't gotten yours yet. I need to get into the office to send those. But you can buy duplicates through our website. Older schools in the program might recall that we used to send every school a sign. But as I mentioned, yep, thank you. As I mentioned on the Zoom call last week, we noticed a lot of signs up in people's offices, and they do make lovely office decor, but we felt like maybe it wasn't the best use of our nonprofit funds to decorate everybody's offices. So if you want signs, you can buy them. You can also buy the artwork from us for, yay, honorable mention. Thanks, Susie, I just saw your chat. You can buy the artwork, license the artwork to produce your own signs. And one of the pieces of feedback I'm hoping to hear from folks today is what else would you like in terms of promoting your awards? So we don't need to get into it now, but sort of bookmark that if you have any feedback for us on what else we could be providing to make sure that it's as easy as possible for awardees to brag and share the news. One thing that we've heard is that award level specific signs would be really nice. The signs were designed before I started at the League, but my understanding is they were intentionally designed to be sort of evergreen so that you don't have to replace them when you move up in award levels. But I know especially for silver to gold level awardees, the sign looks like it's for a silver level award and you want to show off that you moved up to the gold. So I totally get that and happy to work with schools who want to produce their own signage that shows off their award level specifically on the signage. So the other really big change that happened last year was removing enforcement as one of our 5 E's. This is sort of the timeline of what the 5 E's have looked like since the League adopted that criteria back in 2003. The BFU program has been around since 2011, so only the sort of second 2 phases, I guess really, yeah, you started in between these first 2 phases. But we did an entire breakout session on this topic on Sunday, and the recording is up now. So if you missed it, I definitely encourage everyone to go into this session in Hoover. It's under the advocacy organization section on Sunday. And I'll also put the link in the chat box so you can sort of bookmark it. But that was a very detailed session where we really go into what changed and why for the Bicycle Friendly America program in general. That presentation was targeted more towards community advocates. So all the examples we gave were from the BFC application. So during today's presentation, I have some specific examples from the BFU application. But I also wanted to point out, if you missed it yesterday, the plenary keynote address by Charles T. Brown called Arrested Mobility really helps to set the framework for some of our thinking in why we made the change we did. So I'll go into a little bit of that now, though, just to give people a very brief introduction to it. And again, I definitely encourage you to check out both of those sessions. I believe the plenary from yesterday, the recording is not up yet, but it will be very soon. So I'm going to read through these because I think it's really important. But we had 4 main goals for the enforcement updates that we made to the BFA program criteria. The first was to remove the presumption or necessity of police involvement in bike safety activities, such as bicycle crash data collection or campus bike light giveaways, by moving these topics to other E sections and revising related questions and answer options. And I'll share some examples in just a moment. The second goal was to encourage campuses and communities to reduce and de-emphasize traffic-related policing and potentially punitive or discriminatory enforcement practices through alternatives such as automated enforcement, street design improvements, and educational diversion programs. The next goal is to acknowledge that campus, local, and state level traffic laws and the enforcement of those laws will likely continue to be used by most applicant communities and campuses, and as a result should be the focus of rigorous ongoing evaluation and data collection efforts by campuses, communities, and the BFA program to analyze and improve related equity and safety outcomes. And the fourth goal is to improve understanding of demographic data related to existing traffic enforcement, to encourage campuses and communities to increase transparency and accountability in policing and enforcement practices, and to identify and eliminate racial bias in both automated and in-person traffic enforcement. So just a couple of examples of how that plays out in the actual application. We used to have a question under enforcement that included helmet and light giveaways. In the presentation I did with Ken on Sunday, we go into some detail about sort of the bigger policy reasons for why in the US funding trickles down from the federal sources specifically to police departments in so many communities for bike light giveaways. And because of that, we've all had this mindset of bike light giveaways, partner with the police, of course. But we just want to, as the BFA program, sort of remove that presumption that police need to be involved in things like bike light giveaways or helmet or lock giveaways. They're great partners in so many campuses and communities, and if they are a good partner for you, by all means continue to partner with them. We just want to make it clear that you don't have to for our sake. If there are better partners in your community that you want to work with for something like a helmet giveaway, a light giveaway, please, by all means, get creative, work with the appropriate partners who are going to be, the most beneficial for your work. We also, as you can see, expanded that question to be much more broad now that it lives under encouragement, under the bicycle, access to bicycle equipment and repair services. It's sort of with all the questions about bike shops and campus bike co-ops. So trying to expand what campuses think about when they think about sort of making sure their students, staff, and faculty have access to these kinds of bike equipment and accessories. To goal 2, reducing police interactions through alternatives. The existing engineering questions under on and off-road bicycle facilities. Here's an example where we added automated enforcement as one of the answer options, along with a lot of other sort of traffic calming type of solutions. And there's another breakout session I want to point folks to that happened yesterday in the sort of first breakout session time slot on the topic of self-enforcing streets and designing streets specifically to sort of avoid the need for enforcement in the first place by making it sort of the easy, obvious way to drive on that street. A lot of the enforcement questions that we wanted to keep, because it is important to keep talking about enforcement, like we said in goal 3, we acknowledge enforcement is going to still happen almost everywhere in this country. And so we want to put the focus on evaluation and planning of that enforcement. So start thinking about data collection, start thinking about actually, stepping back to assess whether your enforcement practices are working. So there are a number of questions that simply moved to evaluation and planning very intentionally because we want it to be sort of under a microscope of data collection and evaluation efforts by the campus. So I expect this to keep, getting tweaked over the years. But overall, a lot of the questions, again, are just sort of reframed, but look very similar to the way they used to look. And then another example that sort of highlights goal 4 is this is a new open-ended question where we're asking the schools to describe any efforts to evaluate or measure how equitably and effectively their traffic laws are being enforced on campus. And so this right now is an open-ended question on both the BFC and the BFU application, and we look forward to seeing what kinds of responses we get. The goal is to eventually have a sort of multiple choice question that can, prompt schools to think of things that they might not be doing yet. But this is such new territory for a lot of schools and police departments that it is something that might take a few years before we move from the open-ended question to a sort of multiple choice designed question. So with the enforcement changes we made, we know that was a really big shift for a lot of people. We did put together a pretty robust FAQs and resources page on the topic. So those links are here and they're linked from our 5 E's page on our website. So I encourage folks to check that out. And especially if your police department has questions, there are some useful language in here to talk through that and hopefully continue to work with them. Another change we made sort of mid-round last year was COVID-related updates to the application. So we started out with a question under the very sort of intro section, university profile, where we're just asking, is your campus open? And I thought it was pretty interesting. This was the results from the fall 2020 submission round. And the no response people are schools that applied before we added this question, and they were invited to share that information, but a few of them didn't. So that's that 9%. But the vast majority you can see here are under some kind of hybrid model. And just at the end of the last BFU session today, that Jacob, Kate, and Marta were hosting, you all were beginning to discuss this, and I'm very interested to hear sort of what schools are planning and thinking about for the fall to make sure that we're asking the right questions, because this is a lot of the questions, change a little bit when you don't have anyone on campus. And yeah, so looking forward to continuing that conversation. You'll also see on the last application, and I expect we will keep this basically until it feels irrelevant, but these are considered temporary open-ended questions at the end of each E section. Basically, it's the same question repeated under each category. What changed? Are these changes temporary or permanent? And how has your campus addressed or incorporated equity into these changes? So some schools had answers to some of these. Some schools said nothing's changed. So yeah, looking forward to seeing sort of how this evolves over time, and if it should inform sort of new questions that get added to the application in the future. So that leads me to changes in the works or that are under consideration for the future. A big area that we know could be improved on the BFU application is the engineering section. How to better capture the very complex diversity of situations we have on campuses that apply to the program. We know there are campuses with no roads at all, campuses with some car-free roads, some roads with motor vehicle access, some campuses with no motor vehicle access, but they're roads technically, non-campus roads that are on your campus but owned by the city or the state or the county. And then of course, campus borders, connections, periphery, et cetera. Lots of complicated scenarios. Every school is so unique, and we're working through sort of how we could better ask all of these questions so that we get an accurate sense of what your campus looks like, and also making sure that schools that, for example, don't have roads don't have to go through all the questions that currently appear on the application for them that are really only applicable if you have roads. For equity, the big question right now is, we've elevated it to its own E, but it continues to live sort of nested inside all the other E's, because we do feel it's very important to consider it in every category sort of holistically. But as a result, it makes it hard to sort of pull out an equity score and make it very clear in the feedback report that this is a important standalone thing that schools need to consider. So debating whether to sort of pull those questions out into their own page, make it really obvious that this is just as important as the other E's, or to continue to make sure it's thought of as holistically as the way it's designed to do here. So yeah, feel free to put comments in the chat as I go. This is useful, and I can read through them afterwards if you start bombarding me with feedback. So yeah, feel free. And then the other question for equity is, how do we measure success? That's really complicated, and it's going to look really different from school to school and from the BFC program to the BFU program. But it's something we want to explore so that we know, and if you're, succeeding. So this is a really big question, and one that we are very open to input and ideas, and working with schools to help us figure out, so that we sort of have the best practices to share and have the ways to measure success. A couple other changes in the works or under consideration. Around this time last year, I started talking about having a simplified renewal application for schools that know they're still roughly at the same award level they were the last time they applied, and they just want a simpler application process. Since then, as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, our online application software developed the ability to duplicate previous submissions. So that makes me wonder if we still need that option, or if clicking duplicate and updating the few things makes it simple enough for schools who don't intend on trying to move up, but obviously are still looking to renew. So I know there's been a lot of interest in a simplified application for those who don't want to move up, but I'm curious for any schools that applied sort of in that category using the duplicate function, if it felt as cumbersome as filling out the entire application from scratch can. And then I know we have some platinum schools on the call who are always eager to hear what we're thinking about diamond level. That it is a thing. They're obviously in the BFA program. It's not a level anyone has achieved yet, but we, for BFC several years ago, worked with all the platinum communities to sort of set those standards and figure out what was a big enough stretch to get them to keep working, but felt doable and felt attainable in a way that actually motivated them. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation with all the platinum schools. But some of the things we're thinking about for diamond level is academics. The BFU program has this very unique component where you've got researchers on your campus. You have, students who are learning specific topics. And, we have some questions about curriculum and how it's integrated into, bike education, or rather how bikes are integrated into curriculum, and also how actually connecting with community programs and initiatives is integrated into that curriculum. So one of the things we've identified as something a diamond level school would have is a really strong connection with academics and curriculum and research. Advocacy is another category where we want to see a school sort of be a voice for better biking in their community, recognizing that institutions of higher education are very powerful political voices in their local communities, and getting your administration on board with biking enough that they're, vocal about it, not just you as the bike coordinator, or not just the bike commuter group on campus, but the actual administration is actively pushing the community to improve, and for that matter, pushing their state, pushing the nation, like participating in things like Lobby Day to the extent that they can, using their voice as this large institution to drive positive change for bicycling. And then outcomes, tracking ridership, tracking safety, tracking all the metrics that show success. Before we sort of lay out what diamond could look like, we'll need to sort of figure out where our average platinums are and figure out what is realistic in terms of getting criteria that for ridership safety, all of those things that are measurable, that gets them to stretch but feels attainable. And so on that topic of measuring, I mentioned this last week and I mentioned it on one of my breakout sessions earlier this week, but I've been partnering with EcoCounter. We've been partnering with EcoCounter for years in the BFC program, and I've sort of been encouraging them to think about the university world to continue thinking about campuses as great places that need help with bike counts. And so we'll be doing a webinar with them later this year, specifically for schools. They're really curious to hear what bike data challenges you have. I've told, they were very interested when I said that on our last webinar with EcoCounter, a lot of the chat questions I got from schools were about scooters. So they're very interested in talking with you all, doing sort of a listening session. But I also wanted to mention this bike data competition. It's open to any sort of organization or entity that collects bike data of any kind. It doesn't need to be EcoCounter data. So manual, Strava, Zap, anything you have, you can enter this competition, which will open in May. And the winner of the competition will get assistance with data analysis and communication with things like data visualizations with the awesome experts at EcoCounter. So I'm really excited to sort of bring that and some of their great educational resources to the BFU program. So I wanted to share just a couple highlights of some things that we saw in applications. This was a question that came up during the Zoom call last week that Jacob hosted. Just, schools looking for examples of some of the things we saw in those new open-ended questions and some of the open-ended questions that have existed for a few years around equity specifically. So I'll leave this up for a minute for folks to read, but basically thinking about expanding access to bike share was the answer on this one. This one was about diversifying the sort of workforce and the inclusivity of their outdoor bike program. And I'll share these slides out, so sorry I'm going a little fast and I can go back to them afterwards, but just wanted to give people a minute to skim. And then on the, oops, I skipped one. This is a great one talking about international students and different ways to engage, organize rides with international students and those who speak English as a second language. And then adapting to COVID and sort of campus closures and all of that. The scavenger hunt thing has been pretty big on a lot of campuses, I think, sort of social media scavenger hunts and bingo games. And I see Jacob nodding. I know I follow you on Instagram, so I know your school's doing that. And then BCU. And this was sort of a common theme of less people on campus giving bike programs and transportation departments the opportunity to work on things that might not be possible when the campus is really crowded, but also take a minute to breathe and reflect and work on some projects that aren't possible when campus is full. So those are the examples I pulled out, and that's the end of my slides. I intentionally made this session an hour and a half long, thinking that I'd present for the first bit, happy to keep discussing my anything I talked about today, and hearing your feedback. I can go back to any slides if you want to discuss and go into more detail on anything. But then this is also meant to be sort of a peer networking time, and we can do breakout rooms if people want, or we can keep it one big discussion. We have 24 people in the room, so that might be manageable as one group, but feel free to put in the chat box if you really want to talk about a specific topic with your peers. People can sort of break off into groups or stay here with me. So with that, I will open it up to the floor, and let me know if you want me to change slides at all. You should all have the ability to unmute. And if they're, oh, go ahead. Nick, yeah.
Hey, I wanted just to throw out a question to the group because I don't very often get this audience. I'm curious about people's feelings of how things have gone for the fall or the spring semester in terms of the number of bikes on campus. I was kind of anticipating a lot of people would bring more bikes because, you know, it's a perfect social distancing tool, but we've seen just empty bike racks everywhere. I'm quite shocked at how little number of bikes there are on campus. I'm curious if other campuses have seen an actual decrease in the number of bikes around because of COVID related, or if you've hopefully seen increases.
I can, show my video. Hi, I can share from the Stanford scenario. I've been trying to get to campus one day a month, and every visit I've made since COVID, there are very, very few people riding bikes. It's just surreal to see a campus that was once full of bikes. There are very few bikes now. We're hoping that when we do come back that, you know, people will ride. We're trying now to plan for pilot programs to encourage people to ride, because we're hoping that 85% increase in retail sales means that people have been riding at home and they'll continue to, you know, adopt a healthy habit. But it's sort of unknown territory right now.
Yeah, I can echo Adrian's comments here. UC Davis, we've been fully remote, sparing very, very few in-person classes that kind of necessitate in-person education. So it's kind of interesting at our vet med school, the bike racks are still full. They're still very dynamic. It's still a very happening area, but everywhere else on campus is empty. We've taken the opportunity to push forward some really huge capital improvement projects. So it's actually kind of beneficial that it's empty and quiet, as major detours are happening to some of our core campus infrastructure. I've really recognized this as an awesome opportunity, though, to manage our bicycle parking problem, as we have a huge issue with abandoned bikes, which I know I spend a ton of time talking amongst this peer group about the problems that we have and how it's unique to our high rate of ridership. But it's also nothing unfamiliar. Students leave bikes behind, right? And I have a big belief that many of the bikes that we're cleaning up this year have been on racks for the last decade. I think right now I've moved over 2,000 bikes since the beginning of the pandemic. And that has given, yeah, I mean, just the fact that it's quiet has given us that ability. We saw only about 1/10 of the student residents move in that otherwise would have. Yeah, it's very quiet, and I've only been at this university since December 2019. So I got 3 winter months of seeing campus, and then I haven't seen a springtime in Davis yet.
Yeah, it's very similar to what Jeff's doing at UC Davis. We've used we'll call it downtime to clean racks like we've never been able to do before. I know I've moved bikes that are just like Jeff, over 10 years old from campus. A lot of places that we just haven't been able to get to because foot traffic was always bad when we would have access to our vehicles that could clear racks. So it's been a bit of an opportunity to clear. I think a big reason we are doing the hybrid thing, classes on campus and online, but a lot of the students, even though they did come here to College Station to go to class. Most of them, if they're given the online option, are going to Zoom in and not actually travel to campus for it. And I think another big part of the decrease in bikes is because we get a huge influx every fall, and it's because the students are clearing out Walmart, Academy, Target, and all the bike shops. We have no bikes left at all those places anymore right now. So that is definitely has seemed to have had an impact on it as well.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm sorry.
Sorry, real briefly, I just wanted to echo the comment in the chat that please put your school name in your with your name. It's very helpful to see where folks are from. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I'm Michelle Molstead. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm not with a school, but I used to work in bike share and worked with the University of Minnesota. Hi, Eric Bauer. And I was curious about for campuses that have bike share, ours here in the Twin Cities is seasonal for some strange reason. And I was curious if you're around bike share, how you've seen numbers around that. I assume it would be similar to your regular riders, but bike share use at the U of M is pretty strong, especially with staff and students. So any thoughts on that?
The bike share here at UF is a semester model. And so because we're in the sunny state of Florida and there is no COVID in Florida, we've sold out our 230 bike fleet for fall and for spring. So demand has been very high. And, we had a waiting list for both semesters at the end of our reservation period. So we're seeing a lot of demand. We will have a micromobility program pilot starting with the city. So we'll have scooters from VO, Spin, and Bird sometime in May. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays into it as well.
Yeah, at the University of Illinois, we have bike share with VO. And over the last year, we have seen a very dramatic decrease in ridership, but that's because the students were on campus, and during the winter months, they removed the bicycles. They're just, this week, they're going to put the bikes back on campus, so who knows? We are still not expecting the same number that we were getting pre-COVID, but we should still have some increment as compared to fall.
I'll add from the sort of national perspective that we saw enough schools talking about bike share programs having to close down as a result of COVID that we added a checkbox for that to the BFU application this year at the end of the summer because it was so common, unfortunately. And most of that was stemming from sort of the for-profit model bike share programs pulling out, and much to the school's disappointment.
One thing I wanted to share on the Stanford campus, our campus planning and design team did extensive COVID signage throughout the campus, and that included COVID protocol for our bike cages, and also COVID protocol for using we have Darrow bike repair stations on the campus that are being used too. I'd be happy to share. I can send a link to the slideshow that shows the photos if anyone's interested. I was curious if other universities did post signage on their campuses as well regarding COVID in regards to bikes and transportation.
We had social
Hi,
media,
my name is Claire, and I.
Sorry, I was just saying that we had social media notifications sent out to like via mass mail and stuff about COVID related precautions that students can take if, with regards to, let's say, Zipcar, or if they're using bike share or anything. But we didn't have like signs placed on bike racks or on lawn signs or something like that for COVID specifically for bicycles. We had COVID related lawn signs everywhere on campus, but not just for bicycles, not specifically for bicycles, I should say.
Claire, go ahead. If you're there. Claire, if you're trying to talk, you're muted now. Anybody else?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
No worries.
Hi. From NYU. I'm just wondering, I don't know if I captured it. I might have missed the beginning. Did you mention when the application is actually being released for 2021?
No, actually, great question. So the plan is to release it by the end of March, so in the next few weeks. Great question, though. Thank you. And I'll put the survey link for anybody who joined late, but we are sort of debating and deliberating what the ideal timeline is for the BFU program. So I put together a survey that I would love people's input on that won't necessarily affect 2021, since we've already sort of publicly announced a March open and an October close. But looking forward to the future, I'd love input from anybody who has strong feelings of yeah, what the ideal timeline is for you all.
Great. And then just another question. We did apply in 2012 and we got an honorary mention then, so we're looking back into it now for this year. I wonder, can you give any insight as to how, I know it's not a point system on the front end, but can you give any idea of how the grading system works on the league side? Is it flexible for the different types of universities? Like, can you give us any insight as to how that kind of works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the, you know, it's tough because schools are used to ASHE, which has such a clear point system, and you know exactly what you're going to get by the time you're done applying. And the whole premise of the BFA program in general for communities, businesses, and universities is that each entity is so different that there's really no one size fits all. So instead, what we do is we rely on the 5 E's and really try to you know, encourage schools to think about what makes sense for them based on your size, your climate, your geography, your, you know, all the factors that make your campus unique. And then our review team does the same. So, you know, we're not going to hold the 800-person school and the 60,000-person school to the exact same standards. Same for NYU and a very rural school. But we still, the sort of the basic, you know, entities that fall under the 5 E's should be similar. So, you know, what engineering looks like is going to be very different, but there needs to be a strong component for engineering. For a very urban school where you don't own the roads, you know, maybe it's that political voice that I was talking about earlier, but it's also the things like bike parking and end of trip facilities and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's the easiest way that I've explained it in the past is a bronze school has something in all the E's and is really excelling in one. A silver will have something in all E's and really excelling in about 2, and so on and so forth up the award levels. So, you know, by the time you get to platinum, you are really excelling in every single E category. That's one of the reasons the question of is equity a standalone E or is it integrated into the others gets, you know, it becomes very important when you're relying on the E's to determine award levels. So yeah, that's something that is still sort of evolving, I would say. But yeah, otherwise the basic structure of what we're looking for is the same, and yeah, every application is reviewed by actual people trying to take into consideration, you know, where the school is, what the school's potential is, those kinds of things. And I'll tell you, a lot of our reviewers are like on Google Maps looking at your campus streets and, you know, trying to consider what it actually feels like, in addition to listening to the survey responses that we get. I didn't really go into the surveys, but if people have questions about the campus surveys, happy to talk more about that too. I hope that helps, Jane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's super helpful. And congratulations to you guys, because it sounds like a very challenging process on your end. So thank you.
This is kind of an off-topic question, but has anyone had notable success or problems with getting mapping software and Google Maps and Apple Maps and different mapping platforms to accurately represent the different types of infrastructure on campus? I'm just kind of a tangential question, but it annoys me. A lot of people use them as base maps, as reference, wayfinding on campus, and things shouldn't be shown as roads when they're a bike lane, an off-street bike lane, that kind of thing.
Eric, yeah, I just put in the chat to Amelia that OpenStreetMap is sometimes a way better thing to use than Google Maps, especially for bike infrastructure. And because OpenStreetMap is totally open source, you as a human can go and update your entire campus yourself. So you know that it's accurate at that point, right? I've put in every fix-it stand, every bike rack. I've put pictures of the bike racks in some cases. Like I've just like gone overboard, but it then feeds, OpenStreetMap feeds to way more applications. It feeds to all of the different, most of the applications that like ride sharing companies use and Strava uses and things like that. If you update something in OpenStreetMap, you could look at Strava a week later and it's there. So that's definitely a really solid way to up your kind of quality of mapping on campus, instead of having to rely on Google Maps or submitting kind of, you know, asking Google Maps to change things. I find OpenStreetMap is an amazing tool and it's pretty easy to use.
Thanks. I'm curious what people think about, what if a part of the BFU application was sort of submitting your OpenStreetMap, like getting that as accurate as possible, and then just letting us look at that. Would schools feel like that is an accurate representation? Like, could we evaluate your campus looking at that in terms of engineering specifically?
I just spent months doing a layer with our Business Affairs Technical Services Office at GIS with my intern. So we captured every bicycle rack and all of our fix-it stations with type of rack, capacity of rack, condition of rack, covered or not, that sort of thing. So we're going to be building on that, you know, and doing some actual bike counts and something like that later, because data is the place where we really need to improve. But adding all that again to another map layer, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody's using different tools. So, you know, yeah.
If it became a standard though, and if it's what everybody was using and we could rely on it to be consistent, then, you know, I'd be open to it. But so ours now feeds our public campus map. So it's a layer that you can select and put onto the campus map. Which is great for people visiting campus.
Do you think there's a way, and I'm not a map nerd enough to know, but is there a way that you can feed that directly to OpenStreetMap without having to like kind of redo the work? Could some map nerd be able to like kind of import it or some other way?
It seems likely. I would guess that this is probably built on GIS. I have never played with Open Maps before, so I'm just checking it out now. This is cool.
Pretty addictive. Get lost in it for sure sometimes.
But I think Eric mentioned something that's really interesting because Google and Apple are definitely kind of market heavy shares on this. And Amelia mentioned how part of the review process is going in and using Street View to go around and see things. There are parts of our campus that haven't been updated on Google Street View since 2012, and the built infrastructure is vastly different today than it is from when they had that, right? And that's a challenge I know that I've had my own and my department, we've shared amount of problems with this, is trying to get Google to actually update their own things. It seems like they've made this a private enterprise that you can pay into to get an established vendor who then will update your thing. It's really kind of hard to understand exactly how to get that live Street View thing updated. That's the thing I've definitely been interested in, because I'll have people complain about a thing and I'm new to campus, or it's such a vast, like we have some 8,000 acres that we manage bike parking on here. It's hard to sometimes know exactly what that situation is like. And so I go to look at it and I'm joking around, I want to buy a drone. I want to have a drone that I can just fly around and go see these different parts of campus myself. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing. And yeah, I mean, trying to figure out how there's, I don't know, a lobby of campus people who want that infrastructure, that Google Street View to be updated. Like I have a 360 camera, I can make it myself, but I can't get it onto Google. And I think that's its actual biggest challenge. I would make it myself, but I can't update Street View.
One thing I've used in the past, this was mainly just because same issue that Jeff has at UC Davis. I have more bike racks than I know of, just how big our campus is. And I reached out to a graduate level class studying GIS, and just talked to the professor, asked, somewhere down the line, if you ever have a project that you guys want to work on, mapping our bike racks would be super helpful for us. And we all here represent a university, and I guarantee you in your geography class and your urban planning classes, somewhere in there, someone's looking for projects to focus their GIS, like master their GIS skills. And that's a big one that was really helpful for us.
Yeah.
For us,
go ahead.
Hi, for us at the University of Arizona, our planning, design, and construction team department has a GIS team, and they did the heavy lift for us and put all of our bike racks into the GIS enterprise. So I don't know if there's like some opportunity to reach out to and collaborate with other departments. But with that said, the data it only works if it's true. So we found that FM or some other people will move our bike racks. So I'll have to get some of my team members to go out there and make sure that the bike racks are still there. Our department at Parking Transportation Services, we are using Dude Solutions or Asset Works. And so trying to think of a way to either put a sticker, a QR code, or some kind of numbering system on the racks, and so we can go out and check and make sure that rack 1A is still there and kind of keep a better handle on that.
I just had to Google Dude Solutions. I had never heard of that before. Thanks.
And I don't know how many campuses have with scooter and bike share have Lock 2 requirements, but and I'm not sure I remember this correctly, but in Minneapolis, they were starting to require that as part of the agreement, I think, for both scooters and for the Lock 2 bikes. And I think at the U of M, I think every bike rack, and again, Eric, I could be wrong on this, so is mapped, and that was considered on the app. You could locate all of those bike racks on the bike share app. But again,
yeah. So we had where is a valid place to park a scooter? It's not in front of the handicap door opener. It's not blocking the sidewalk. So we did the bike racks are the acceptable place. Bike racks are at every building. And yes, you're correct. The renewal that the city of Minneapolis so we partnered with neighboring jurisdictions so that there was continuity, both as far as contract time period as well as vendors. that are operating to operate more seamlessly between our urban campus, the broader city, and ideally the neighboring cities. And we've had mixed success with getting our neighboring cities to do that.
I live in St. Paul, the neighboring city, and I'm really mad about no bike shares.
We did the same thing in Mason. We partnered with the city of Fairfax, and whoever they permit, we have a separate memorandum of agreement, but we permit the same vendors. We use scooter corrals, and bike racks is our secondary.
We're being held hostage as a city that doesn't like scooters, and our transition from Jump to Lime has Lime saying you can't have bike share without scooters. So it's really been a fun discussion with our regional planner, MPO, StateCog, the city of Davis, and our own campus community, where it's like, do we want to take this hard scooter line? Yes or no? And I have my own belief that I think we're through the worst parts of scooters. Lock 2 requirements really clearly make it easier to deal with, but our campus and city leadership does not see it the same way. So we're having to go in and try to figure out what bike share we want to try to do. Do we want to RFP it, RFQ? Like it's kind of in this interesting, challenging place. And all I want to do is get bike share back for the fall, because we're going to have a huge problem come fall. Our student run transportation system can't hire drivers because there's no students here to apply. And so in the fall, if the buses don't have the staffing, the buses won't run, and then all of those people will be riding, and we already have a lot of bicycling. So it's a fun problem that we're looking at here, and hopefully we have enough months to fix it.
Well, Jeffrey, my community, Denton, the whole community, they were anti-scooters and kind of hesitant about e-bikes as well. So we had VO Ride in our town, and they kind of up and left early in COVID. I don't even think they had a chance to really get hit. I think they were just like, they don't want scooters. We want scooters are the big thing. So they're not really worth our time. So we don't even have bike share right now. Before our city traffic engineer left, he was looking at possibly the city and both universities in my town trying to collaborate to bring like a city bike share, but he left, so I don't know where we are with that. But but yeah, I mean, they will just straight up leave if they decide you're not a profitable place anymore.
That happened. Well, that almost happened to us at A&M. We are also VO Ride, and our city council and our leadership here at Texas A&M University were very anti-scooters as well. And so we don't have scooters on campus right now. We have sit-down throttle assist by electric bikes is what we call them. They're scooters though. They have the bigger wheels, and they solve a few of the issues that I have with the traditional bird and lime scooters. And because of that, we've been able to keep the bikes, our pedal bikes, on campus by allowing the scooter or this sit-down throttle assist bicycles to operate on campus. It's been really, I mean, like, when we had the last snowpocalypse here in Texas, our transit got shut down, buses were not moving at all. It was the first week of the Cosmos is what they're called, the throttle assist on campus. We only had 200 on campus, and the first day when there was no bus services, no one was driving, those 200 Cosmos serviced, gave 500 rides in one day. And the pedal bikes were still there because the Cosmos were there, and those gave about 300 rides out of I think we have about 1,000 bikes on campus right now. So it is, to find bike share, a standalone vendor is, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's very, very, very rare these days now. And so when you make the small concession to allow scooters, especially with the new Lock 2 systems really solving a lot of the issues, it can be make the pill a little bit easier to swallow and get bikes on campus as well.
We're in the final agreement, Jeff, with Gotcha/Bolt Mobility for e-bikes only, no scooters yet. So hopefully getting 200 e-bikes starting in April. So it's only been 4.5 years of working out the plan. And the industry's changed 100 times since then. So, but they are bike only at this point.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll definitely pass that along as we're going through the next phase of this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's with Bolt, right? And Bolt started as scooters, but they're happy to just provide e-bikes only. So
Yeah, right now at the University of Illinois, we also have VioRide, and we have 500 bicycles, and all of them are e-bikes now. We've been asking for pedal bikes, but since we do not allow any scooters, they say we are not going to put any pedal bikes. If we allow scooters, they'll bring pedal bikes. But so yeah, that's something to think about. But no, we do actually like VioRide. Their service is great. They are very responsive.
Well, I'll just say that I'm very excited about the next revolution of bike sharing, which apparently is e-cargo bike sharing. Because I don't have a car and I really want to go to IKEA and bring home something besides chocolate. So
Kind of a quick aside on that. One of my favorite things I've seen bike share was 2018 in Sacramento. A group of jump e-bikes with kid trailers hitched onto the back of it. And it was clearly people who just said, no, I'm going to make this bike do what I want it to do. And so they figured out how to get a seat post style trail bike onto the e-bike, onto the jump bike. And yeah, I think I have a link to the photo available. I'll have to drop that in here. It's such a fun image.
yeah, we have had a few of those in the Twin Cities, and I think it does something to the liability waiver. And this is my former bike share self speaking, but yeah, it's great to see people make them work for what they need.
I wonder if anyone can share engagement tips during these COVID times with students on campus. Well, there's very few students on campus. I don't know if anyone has anything to share. We did some helmet giveaways and some bike giveaways, but there's very few people participated. But I'm just wondering if anyone has anything that they've done that they could share.
At Stanford, we weren't allowed to do any kind of gathering of students, so everything we did was virtual, and we had tremendous reception. We did 17 webinars and had over 450 participants. It was incredible, and we just mixed it up with, how to fix a flat, how to do a quick safety check, to, e-bikes, how to buy a bike. We're building out a web page that will have all the links that I can share. It should be up in a couple weeks. We posted, the presentations and then the Q&A. We followed up by sharing the Q&A and the slide deck and the recordings. But going into it, I thought we'd do a couple, and we ended up, people just kept signing up. And then since then, the interest has sort of tapered off, and we went from an hour to shortening it up because of Zoom fatigue to 30 minutes and trying to just do shorter presentations to get people interested. And the reception was good with that too. I think an hour, people now, just too many Zoom calls and meetings, their attention span really sort of drifts. But the quick 30-minute, people can dedicate that much time to bike safety.
Nice.
I'd be happy to share Zoom tips. You know, I went into this not knowing a lot about Zoom. I mean, I can do a Zoom call, but I learned so much from hosting webinars. I'd be happy to follow up and answer any questions anyone might have.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Jacob, we got a couple requests in the chat for you to talk about the scavenger hunt, your social media stuff. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the scavenger hunt was pretty much solely an intern-driven project, which was great. I have 4 interns. We pay our interns because we want them to treat it like a job. When COVID hit, a lot of their job had been, or typically is, doing maintenance and repairs for our Gator Gears, which is the student bike rental. We also have almost 80 bikes in our department bike fleet, the bike share fleet, which they do maintenance on as well. So we were looking for other stuff for them to do. So this allowed a lot of them to start to engage with social media and outreach, which has really grown for us over the last year. So they essentially put together these scavenger hunts, which were conducted mostly through Instagram posts, where, for, I think it was the month of May, for National Bike Month, a couple times a week we would have, prompts for people to go out on their bikes and visit a park within the city of Gainesville, or go to their favorite place on campus and take a photograph. Sort of those sorts of things to encourage people to get out on their bikes and ride. Really kind of things that came up from those. And if you go to Instagram, you can check us out. We're at BikesUF, and you can visit our history, and I think you can see some of those posts from that time period. But yeah, the change in COVID really did get us to pivot and think more about how we can reach an audience that isn't as captive as the one that's on campus. So it's led to a lot of changes. We completely redesigned our website, and we completely redesigned sort of our visual presence and the visual language we use. The logo that's on my background is one that we designed this year. And there's a host of other icons. So I sort of have been creating an iconography that we use when we post about different events that matches the format of the icon with the bike and the gear right there. So we've been sort of thinking a lot about how our communication, how to be more intentional with it, because in the past it's been very haphazard, and we've just been so busy with operating everything else that it hasn't been something that we've had to focus on to be successful. And that really changed this year.
I really appreciate that question about engagement. I find that there's quite a perception in, I'm at the University at Albany, State University of New York at Albany, in Albany, New York, in what's often called the capital region of New York State. And the perception is that cycling is very dangerous. And I often meet students from, who come, like graduate students who come to the campus from places like Cornell and Ithaca, or colleges in Boston. And they'll say, I rode my bicycle all around Ithaca, or I rode my bicycle all around Boston, but I feel that is dangerous here, which really surprises me because Albany is a much smaller city and this much less traffic. But anyhow, I appreciated your efforts at University of Florida, because those are a great ways to get people on bikes and having fun, and kind of not considering that it's a dangerous thing. It's a fun thing, and then that translates into riding more. So I just wonder if other people have that perception on their campuses or in their communities that cycling is a dangerous thing, and students don't necessarily want to engage in that. And then I'll finish up really quickly. I teach English as a second language on campus to international students. And I was really sad when one student told me that when they were working with the international agent to choose a campus, to choose a school in the United States, Albany was listed when bicycling was one of the metrics that was measured, or transportation. Albany was given a very low score in bicycling safety. So I just am curious to know what efforts are being made on other campuses to promote cycling and to encourage students to ride and to get rid of that perception of, get rid of the fear and the perception of danger.
I just shared a link from some video profiles that we started doing with campus commuters, and a lot of them do. Some of them, kind of mention that they had experiences of dangerous riding conditions when they were at their homes, maybe in Fort Lauderdale or other places that are less bike-friendly areas. And once they got to UF, they really engaged with the cycling culture, and they found that riding a bike really worked for them because of the bicycle-friendly nature of the bikeability of Gainesville and the bikeability of our campus. And so it's been really interesting to hear these profiles, hear these students. We've got some students, we've got some alumni videos that are going to be coming out. We're working on getting some more faculty and staff to include. But hearing them talk about the importance of bikes, their experience, obviously these people have self-selected to be a part of these, so they're like top tier involvement with cycling. But they, they've been, I think that they are pretty inspiring, and I'm very excited to get feedback on them. We just released these this week, and we're going to have more and continue it going. So I'm really excited to have it sort of become like a longitudinal thing, where in 5 years, maybe we have 100 of these, and we can look back and sort of see the, have some additional sort of experience the gravity of what biking has meant to people on campus. Jeff, so I have been creating these videos myself. My interns have been helping me to reach out to their friends and other people on campus that they know who might be interested in being part of them for now. But I shoot the videos, I edit the videos, and I personally created and recorded the music that's in the background of the videos too. But to the question of how we're encouraging cycling, this is one of the ways that we're trying to do it, and also to help people really get past that idea that, cycling is inaccessible or cycling is dangerous, which is a really consistent and prevalent, idea and thought process on our campus. We did a survey in 2018 where we got 12,000 responses, which is a pretty big portion of our campus of about 70,000. And a lot of the open feedback related to bike issues. It was a general transportation survey. So we had a lot of people who weren't cyclists answering some of these cycling questions, but it's very common to think that a person on a bicycle is a person who's in danger. And so we are, thinking about that and working on that too.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the videos that I'm very excited to look at.
And I think that's a problem for all of biking in general, right? Like if I'm saying goodbye to a colleague at work, I'm about to commute home, they don't ever say have fun. They always say stay safe or bike safe or something to do with safe. And I'm like,
oh my goodness, I hear you. That's my least favorite comment also.
But it's every day, like it's just built into kind of thing. So it's more about, how do we change perception around what biking is the hard part. And my wife is in the background laughing at me because she's from Albany, New York. And she's like, but it is unsafe.
No.
It's all good. She would rather bike in Boston than Albany is what she said.
I think one of the reasons I asked Jacob if that was student promoted, right? But that student voice, I think, resonates a lot with the campus environment, right? And that's a thing. Like I'm working on that kind of whole PR campaign as we're looking towards fall and really needing to encourage safe cycling. I don't want to say safe cycling, but you put 25,000 students on bikes together and some accidents might happen. But really trying to look forward on how the student voice can build that kind of viral energy possibly. It's really successful with our student health and counseling services, right? Like getting people up to talk about partying safe. Like a professional is not the right person that you might want to listen to, but if you have someone who's part of your peer group getting up and telling you about how to party safe, how can we get someone up there to talk about riding safe? And so I'm looking forward to this next year's orientation, where we'll be working with the student housing and orientation group to actually go through bike education with every orientation group. That will be mostly done by their orientation leaders rather than me going out and teaching people about the stuff. It will be teaching all of those people to teach all of those people. And I'm hopeful and eager to see how it goes. I don't want to count it as a success because it hasn't happened, and there's a lot still dependent on that being in person for the fall, which is still a big question. And that's, our university has made a statement that says we will be in person, but it's still challenging to know because the future is uncertain.
On the topic of in person, I just dropped a link in the chat for a session from last year's National Bike Summit at UC Irvine, shared about their really awesome bike ambassador program, which much more applicable once you have students on campus, but that's a great program to consider, or a model to consider for that similar sort of peer-to-peer, because I do think that is so powerful. And I love the videos, Jacob. I think that's a great way to adapt the concept for virtual times. So we have 9 minutes left in this session, and then I know Tim's, where is Tim, by the way? Can we just say? We have Tim's meetup for those of you who want to continue the conversation, but in our next now 8 minutes, any other sort of burning topics for people that you've really wanted to discuss with this group, or ask me, or that you want me to hear? Yep.
Amelia, did you want to know about people's university's plans for the fall?
Yeah.
Or did you want that some other time?
If people are willing to share now, if there aren't any other hot topics, if people have other things they're really more excited to talk about, feel free to just shoot me a message of sort of what you're planning. But it sounded from the last session like that was something others wanted to hear about too. So if I'm reading the room.
I can tell you the trend in Texas is that, in just Texas in general, I believe that the plan is to plan for everything to go back to normal, but be prepared to pull back and go hybrid or online if needed. So at least my university, and they said that that's what other peers have been doing, is plan for the best, prepare for the worst, is I think the approach right now.
Nice. And Eric just pointed out to me that I could do a quick poll. So I'm going to type that while other people are talking. And then we can hear from everybody at once. So share your thoughts. Anybody else?
I think the one, and I know we have lots of other large state schools on the call here, but regardless of it being in person or not, are we going to have 500, 600 person sessions? And how does that model just go back into the university going forward? That's a thing our school hasn't really addressed on what hybrid thing do they want to maintain, because I think it has been exceptional for certain students, while it's been very challenging for others. But I don't know, even if we are back in person in the fall, if we're going to be back to in-person 600 person lectures. That seems still pretty far away until we, that's my own skepticism coming out.
This is Eric at the University of Minnesota. I have a related question. I don't actually remember what my school ended up doing during COVID, but one of the topics I was thinking of when this all started was we have 15-minute class breaks right now to get around between classes. Have any of your schools lengthened that period of time to get around between classes temporarily? And are you intending, do you think that that's going to continue in the future? That plays a big impact for campuses that are more spread out, how much time they have to get from one spot to the other between classes.
I'd really love to see the correlation from class change time and campus bike safety statistics, because I think we have a very short class change time and a high rate of ridership. And I think that does very negative things for our crash rates. So if we could try to push out research amongst this group of folks, right, to encourage our university's administration to lengthen class change in order to promote public safety, that would be a really interesting thing, because that class change of 15 minutes sounds dreamy. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whoa, we could literally walk across our core campus in that time.
So
yeah, we've got a tiny campus, but we actually adjusted our times to be 20 minutes between classes, but staggered the class start and end times by 5 minutes each way, so that there wasn't as much kind of mass chaos in that 15-minute period. It was kind of buffered with 5 minutes on either side of it. So it seemed to work for COVID related things, but I'm not sure about bike crashes, Jeffrey.
Yeah, we have students that are going between our Minneapolis campus and St. Paul campus, and there are definitely some students that choose to drive to the St. Paul campus, and kind of curious about opportunities to, if there's mode shift opportunities there.
Nice. In the last few minutes, Jacob, could I ask you to put the link to the group again, just for people who joined late, or maybe that was the other session you shared it in, I don't even remember. But I have gotten some private messages, people looking for, sort of, how do I keep this conversation going with my peers? This is so great. And so there is a group, and there's also a listserv. Does anybody have that handy to share how to sign up for the listserv? I might be able to pull it up. But I'll just otherwise answer out loud. In addition to this awesome network that has sort of come up very organically over the last decade plus of bike campus programmers, so there's a listserv, there's a new Slack group of like a year or two old, new. Thank you, universitybikeprograms.org. The BFU network is also, through the league. I'd say once you apply to the program, you sort of get into our fold, and we try to include you on things like webinars and whatnot. It's definitely something I hope to do more of. We've been very short-staffed for the last few years, so I will admit that we don't serve this group as much as I would like to. And I hope to continue to grow that and, continue these conversations beyond just the summit. The summit is the big time every year. I get to see you all. But yeah, the BFU program does have some great resources online. So I'll just put that link in the chat box as well, and hope that anybody who's new to the program can sort of explore it, and feel free to reach out to me. And once the application opens, in March, use that application to help your campus improve. We designed it very intentionally as an educational tool, so you don't even have to click submit to learn a lot from the process. And we've heard from so many schools that just the act of actually applying was really beneficial, because you have to bring all of these different stakeholders together to collect the answers. And many campuses formed committees after starting that initial process for the sake of the application. And that's one of my favorite things about the program. It sort of helps campuses build this human infrastructure that's so important. So yeah, looking forward to continuing to work with you all. I'll download this chat and make sure that if there are any other questions, I can answer offline. And please feel free to reach out to me through Whova over the next few days, or online, on email, bfa@bikeleague.org or amelia@bikeleague.org. And you all have a minute to get to your BFU meetup. So enjoy. I won't be there, but if anybody wants to join the lobby day happy hour at the end of the day today to hear from all the folks who have been lobbying on Capitol Hill, please come to that. I think it's at 7 p.m. Eastern, but it's in Whova. Look for it. Look forward to seeing you all at future events. Thanks,
Amelia, I can tell you, Amelia, that one one staffer we met with did say, well, so tell me, how do they rank these bicycle friendly communities? So because I went through this application through the university
Nice.
side of it, I was able to briefly describe all the different E's and everything.
Love it. I love when the BFA program comes up in lobby day meetings. That's one of my favorite things. Bye, Eric. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Nice to
Amelia.
meet all of you.
Bye.
Before, great to see all of you.
Any good
Amelia. Great.
Thanks. Thanks for being here. Bye.